house on Ash Grove Lane had been abandoned for over 3 decades. Its chipped gray paint and sagging roof, a silent testament to the horrors whispered about in town. For Sam Harris, a struggling journalist desperate for a story that could revive his stagnant career, the house was irresistible. "People love a good scare," he muttered, clutching his camera as he stared up at the looming structure. It wasn't the first time he'd taken on a local legend, but this time felt different. A steady wind pushed through the dead trees surrounding the house, making their branches groan like an old man rising from bed. Sam adjusted his flashlight and pushed the rusted gate open. The iron protested with a screech that echoed down the empty lane. "Perfect," Sam said to himself, recording the sound on his phone. Atmosphere. Inside, the house smelled of mold and something faintly metallic. Sam ignored the urge to gag and focused on the cracked wallpaper, which was patterned with roses now faded to a dull gray. On the floor lay a scattering of ashes, fanned out like a shadow left behind by something no longer there. His flashlight flickered as he stepped over them, sending his heart into an anxious rhythm. The locals claimed the house was cursed, tied to the infamous Armitage family. They had disappeared one night without a trace, leaving behind only a diary and a cryptic message scratched into the bedroom wall. "It watches from the ashes." Sam wasn't one to believe in curses, but he couldn't deny the eerie weight of the air. It pressed against him, urging him to leave, but curiosity drove him deeper. Upstairs, a faint creaking noise caught his attention. "Hello?" he called out, his voice breaking in the stillness. No answer. He followed the sound to a small, dusty room at the end of the hall. The window was shattered, letting in a beam of moonlight that illuminated something strange in the corner. A small pile of ash arranged in the shape of a human hand. Sam knelt beside it, his pulse hammering. "What the hell?" he whispered. He reached for his camera to capture the scene when a sudden gust of wind blew through the room, scattering the ash. The air turned icy, and an overwhelming sense of dread wrapped around him like a noose. "You shouldn't have come," a voice rasped behind him. Sam spun around, his flashlight trembling in his grip. Standing there was a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing like embers. Before he could scream, the figure lunged forward, and the world went black. When Sam woke up, he was lying outside the house, his camera smashed beside him. The only thing left intact was his phone, still recording. As he played back the audio, his blood ran cold. Over the static, a voice hissed, "The ashes beneath us will rise." Sam sat in his cramped apartment, staring at his cracked phone screen. He had replayed the recording from the house on Ash Grove Lane more times than he could count. The voice was unmistakable, guttural, and menacing. No matter how much he wanted to believe it was a hoax or some kind of audio distortion, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him home. The air in his apartment felt heavy, like the walls were closing in. He could still feel the icy grip of the entity in the house, its ember-like eyes seared into his memory. He reached for his coffee, but his hand trembled so violently that the mug tipped, spilling its contents across the table. "Damn it," he hissed, snatching a dishcloth. As he wiped up the mess, his eyes fell on the scattered notes and photos from his research. The Armitage family story was a chilling one. Disappearances, strange symbols, and the mysterious pile of ashes left behind. The locals avoided talking about them, but Sam had found enough to piece together a picture of a family dabbling in the occult, culminating in their violent end. Or so the rumors claimed. A sudden knock at the door startled him. He wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, he hesitated, staring at the door as his heart raced. The knock came again, louder this time. Slowly, he approached and opened it to find a woman standing there, her pale face framed by dark hair. She looked haggard, her eyes sunken and bloodshot. "Are you Sam Harris?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," he replied, gripping the door tighter. "Who's asking?" "My name's Rachel Armitage. I saw your post online about the house. We need to talk." Sam ushered her inside, his mind racing. Rachel claimed to be the granddaughter of the original Armitage family, the last living relative connected to the house. She told him that her family's disappearance wasn't random. They had been trying to contain something. "My grandfather made a deal," she said, her voice trembling. "He thought he could control it, but it grew too powerful. The house became a gateway." "Gateway to what?" Sam asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. "To something ancient," Rachel said. "Something that feeds on fear and despair. My family tried to stop it, but it consumed them. Now it's awake again." Sam leaned back, trying to process her words. "Why come to me? I'm not some exorcist or demonologist." "Because you've seen it," she said firmly. "And once it marks you, it won't stop. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not." As if on cue, the lights in the apartment flickered. A low rumble echoed through the walls, and both of them froze. Rachel's face turned pale. "It's here," she whispered. The temperature in the room plummeted, and a thick, sulfuric smell filled the air. Sam grabbed his flashlight, but the beam was weak, barely cutting through the growing darkness. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement, shadows that writhed and pulsed as if alive. Rachel grabbed his arm. "We have to leave, now." Before they could reach the door, the shadows coalesced into a towering figure, its ember eyes burning with malevolence. It spoke in a voice that shook the very foundation of the building. "You cannot escape the ashes." Sam's legs burned as he and Rachel sprinted down the alleyway, their breath forming clouds in the frigid night air. Behind them, the shadowy figure moved with an unnatural speed, its ember-like eyes piercing through the darkness. "Keep moving," Rachel shouted, pulling Sam forward when he faltered. They didn't stop until they reached the church at the edge of town, a crumbling relic from the 1800s that had long since been abandoned. Rachel shoved the heavy doors open, and they stumbled inside, slamming them shut behind them. For a moment, the silence was deafening. "What the hell is that thing?" Sam panted, leaning against the nearest pew. "It's not a thing. It's a demon," Rachel said, her voice shaking. She dropped her bag onto the altar and began pulling out old, tattered books, jars filled with strange powders, and a dagger with an intricately carved hilt. "We don't have much time. It knows we're here." Sam watched her with mounting unease. "You're telling me that thing's a demon? Like from hell? And you just happen to have an exorcist kit lying around?" Rachel glared at him. "Do you want to survive this or not? My grandfather's journal said this church was built on sacred ground. If we can trap it here, we might stand a chance." "Might?" Sam echoed. But Rachel was already lighting candles and sketching a symbol on the floor with chalk. The symbol was intricate, a mix of geometric shapes and unfamiliar runes that made Sam's head ache just looking at them. "This is a binding circle," Rachel explained. "We need to lure it inside and hold it long enough to sever its connection to this world. But it's risky. If we mess up, we die." Sam finished for her, his mouth dry. "Great. What's my part in this death trap of a plan?" Rachel handed him the dagger. "You're the bait." Sam stared at her, incredulous. "You can't be serious." Before Rachel could respond, the temperature plummeted again, and the candles flickered violently. The church trembled, and a guttural growl echoed from the shadows. The demon was here. "Get inside the circle," Rachel hissed, her voice tight with fear. Sam swallowed hard and stepped into the chalk-drawn symbol. He held the dagger tightly, his palms slick with sweat. The shadows coalesced near the entrance, and the demon emerged, its towering form scraping the ceiling. Its ember eyes locked onto Sam, and a cruel smile spread across its face. "You think this will save you?" the demon hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. Rachel began chanting in a language Sam didn't understand, her voice steady despite the fear etched on her face. The demon roared, lashing out at the circle, but the lines of chalk glowed bright, repelling it. "Keep it distracted," Rachel yelled. Sam gripped the dagger, his voice shaking as he taunted the creature. "What's the matter? Not so scary when you can't cross the line, huh?" The demon snarled and lunged again, but the barrier held firm. Rachel's chanting grew louder, the glow of the circle intensifying. The air grew heavy, and Sam could feel the weight of the demon's fury pressing down on him. Suddenly the demon laughed, a deep, guttural sound that made Sam's blood run cold. "You think you've won?" it sneered. "You don't even know what you've unleashed." Before Sam could react, the creature slammed its fists into the ground, shattering the circle. The glow flickered and died, and the room plunged into darkness. "Rachel," Sam shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the deafening roar of the demon. The room was chaos. Shadows surged like black flames, consuming the walls of the church, while the demon towered above, its ember-like eyes glowing with triumph. Sam stumbled back, clutching the dagger tightly, his mind racing for a solution. "Rachel," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the roaring storm of darkness. Rachel was on the ground, her face pale. Clutching an ancient book to her chest, she struggled to her knees, blood trickling from a gash on her temple. "The circle," she cried. "We need to rebind it. Hold it off." "Hold it off? Are you kidding me?" Sam retorted, dodging a swipe from the demon's massive claw. The sheer force of the attack sent him sprawling to the floor, the dagger skittering out of reach. The demon loomed over him, its fiery gaze piercing into his soul. "You should have stayed away," the creature hissed. "Now, you'll burn with the rest." Before the demon could strike, a bright flash of light erupted from Rachel's hands as she recited another chant. The shadows recoiled, and the demon snarled, momentarily disoriented. Sam seized the opportunity, scrambling to retrieve the dagger. Rachel's voice grew stronger, her chanting filling the room with a resonant hum. "Sam, stab it through the heart," she yelled, her hands trembling as she held the demon at bay. Sam hesitated, his fingers tightening around the dagger's hilt. He had never believed in demons, let alone fought one. But as the creature's fiery gaze locked onto him, the weight of survival crushed any doubt. With a guttural yell, he lunged forward, plunging the blade into the demon's chest. The creature howled in agony, its form convulsing as the dagger glowed with an intense light. Shadows poured from its body, writhing and dissipating into the air. The ground trembled violently, cracks spidering across the stone floor as the demon thrashed. Rachel stumbled forward, the book clutched tightly in her hands. "Finish the chant," she screamed, tossing the book to Sam. He caught it, his eyes scanning the cryptic text. The words seemed to burn into his mind, but he forced them out, his voice trembling with each syllable. The demon roared, its body collapsing inward as the chant reached its climax. With one final ear-splitting scream, the demon's form shattered like glass, scattering into a million glowing embers that vanished into the darkness. The church fell silent, the oppressive air lifting as the light of dawn crept through the shattered windows. Sam dropped the book and collapsed to his knees, his chest heaving. Rachel limped toward him, her face etched with exhaustion and relief. "You did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam shook his head. "No, we did it." But as the two of them sat in the wreckage of the church, a faint whisper echoed in the air, too quiet to understand, but impossible to ignore. Rachel stiffened, her eyes wide with dread. "Sam," she said, her voice trembling, "this isn't over." From the corner of the room, a small pile of ashes began to stir, shifting and coalescing into an all too familiar shape. The ember eyes flickered to life once more,